Following the Sega tradition of attaching the word Virtua to pretty much everything, this is the Virtua Stick, arcade joystick for the Sega Saturn, a must-have for Virtua Fighter. And look at the image on this box. That thing is gigantic. There's no way the controller could be as large as that image. In fact, it's much larger. Bring the arcade experience home. This thing looks like it would be relatively expensive, and I have no idea what the original retail price was, but these are relatively easy to come by and very affordable today. Even in unopened boxes, I found this on eBay for $20, new in the box, sealed. And check it out, Virtua Fighter 2 is available winter of 1995. If you're watching this in the past, it's coming soon. This is a beautifully constructed controller, and what's truly remarkable about it is not just the sheer size of it, because it's gigantic, but the fact that it's basically larger than the Sega Saturn itself. It's at least wider than the Sega Saturn itself. Look at that. That's ridiculous. You've got to love controllers that are bigger than the game systems that they're made for. It proudly boasts Sega Saturn right on the front of the Virtua Stick. And check this out. NES Advantage, tiny compared to it. Sega Genesis 6-button arcade stick, it's even dwarfed by the Virtua Stick. That's how massive this thing is. Although, this is actually heavier, and therefore I prefer this controller. But I'll get into that in a moment. And just for yucks, since I have one sitting here, here's the Virtua Stick compared to the Nintendo DS. Tiny. If only you could hook the Virtua Stick up to this thing. Here's the Virtua Stick compared to a red stapler. One of the main selling points for the Virtua Stick was its use with Virtua Fighter 2, allowing you real arcade control with a joystick. Also 6 buttons plus the left and right buttons are moved up front, so you have a total of 8 buttons there with which to play Virtua Fighter 2, which has pretty complicated button combinations and controls to begin with. So if you're used to playing Virtua Fighter in the arcade and want an arcade style fighting stick for your Sega Saturn, there you go, that's what you get. You buy this thing. Let's take a close-up look at the buttons. As you can see, these are very arcade style, hard plastic. They feel great. They're a little bit concave, so your finger actually fits into it and doesn't slide out. They moved the front 2 buttons, the L and R button, which are on the front of the Sega Saturn controllers, off to the side here, so you can use this layout to play Virtua Fighter 2 effectively and give you an arcade feel. Over here we have the Start button, which is labeled Start. Also note the nice textured surface of the Virtua Fighter stick. They even give you some additional texture bumps over here, so if you're playing you could rest your hand in there for use with the joystick. Let's take a look at the joystick itself. Nice design, great motion, feels like a real arcade joystick. It's big too. And these are the turbo buttons. You can assign different turbo functions, turbo speed up here. This is a really well designed controller, one of the best looking ones that I own. And as the packaging says, this works with all games on the Sega Saturn. You can play other fighting games like Battle Monsters with this, or some of the excellent spaceship shooting games on the Saturn. If you want that arcade style, you can make something auto-fire and play like that. My only complaint about the Virtua Stick is the same complaint I have with just about every controller. It's just not heavy enough. In fact, the Sega Genesis 6-button arcade stick is heavier than this. If we look underneath it, you can see it's quite large. Has little rubber feet on there. Gives you the Sega model number, made in Taiwan. And it generally feels hollow. It feels like you could put a block of lead in here, and perhaps you could if you opened it up and inserted a giant block of lead. Or gold. Why stop with lead? The Sega Genesis fighting stick feels more solid for whatever reason, and just I have different feet on the bottom of it, but it doesn't seem to move around as much. There you have the Sega Saturn Virtua Stick, arcade fighting stick, lots of buttons, turbo controls, Sega Saturn. For the cost of this thing today, you really can't go wrong. Look at that, they've even added some kind of textured detail onto the plug of this thing. That's craftsmanship. You don't see that anymore. What somebody needs to do is make this thing work with the PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 or Wii. Or Nintendo DS. Let's see if we can get this to work. Alright.